You are listening to the Intercoastal Podcast, part of the Destination Marketing Podcast Network. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Intercoastal Podcast, brought to you live from Beaufort, South Carolina. We're excited to jump right in and continue discussing all the things that Beaufort has to offer, and we have Robb Wells on the line again with us, so we're excited to get going. Thanks for being here again, Robb.
Thanks for having me. Like I said, I enjoy coming in this space and discussing all things Beaufort, Port Royal, and the Sea Islands.
Yeah, we definitely love having you here. It's always an adventure, and we always get to talk about really awesome things. I'm excited to get into this episode. We were talking before about just kind of a great starting place when you come to Beaufort. So if you want to kind of introduce us to the Historic Beaufort Arsenal.
That's right. So we have the great fortune of being a historic destination, and history just kind of oozes out throughout the area. We trace our roots back all the way back to Spanish exploration days. So it's, 1560s. We have our traces back then. But the beautiful thing it's pretty cool. And when you start to get into it, any of these southern coastal destinations have a rich history, and we fall in line with that. And Beaufort has a collection of historic structure that, basically survived the many different battles that have taken place in and around this area. We have served during the Revolutionary War. We've had places during, the Civil War, of course. And during that time period, the area had a lot of its architecture saved. And
That's amazing.
It is. During the Civil War, the Union forces, used a lot of the homes as their offices and as their hospitals, and we were able to save a lot of our architecture. The beautiful thing about the Arsenal is it also serves as our visitor center. And so when people come to get their start in Beaufort, what better place to hit this historic city up and get information and then visit one of its historic structures in the process. And so the Arsenal serves not only as the visitor center, but home to the Beaufort History Museum. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop to kind of get your feet wet in the Beaufort area, kind of collect yourself on some of the history that you're going to find and see around the area. But the Arsenal itself is unique. As you referenced as the yellow building, and my daughters at one time long ago referenced it as a castle. But
it does kind of look like a castle. So
it does.
For anyone listening, you should definitely look it up. It's really, really cool building.
No doubt. It is really, really cool how it's come to be. And this yellowish building has come a long way. It was built in 1798. It was built.
Wow.
Yep, it was built on the original city square, and it's kind of served as a headquarters and store weapons for the volunteer artillery and the militia here in the area. And then you see that it's been through several of these wars. And between the Revolutionary and Civil War, it was as a social institution, and it would house its 50 to 100 soldiers. They hosted banquets inside, so it was a kind of a social place. And then in the 1850s, we started seeing militias start to get strengthened, and you have secessionist talk. And the next thing you know, the Beaufort Arsenal expanded, and it rebuilt the original tabby structure with brick. And then they became it's how they ended up handling during that time period. And so where we are now, from that time to this time, it's had several progressions in its restoration and upfitting, but the charm has never left. The gate entering into it still has its deep, rich architecture, and a lot of changed since then. The courtyard and porticos all have a story to tell.
I love that.
And so it's a great part to start the story. Somewhere in this space we will talk about the significance of the architectural of the type of architect here, but this one is built out of something called tabby. And tabby is very much a stronghold, and you will find tabby in and around our area here. Tabby is a kind of a concrete substance. It's kind of made of oyster shells and some other hard substances that ends up becoming a very hard building material. Oh. And we will talk about that, I'm sure, in some space, because it's a show in itself, what tabby has meant to this area. But this building is pretty significant, as well as the Beaufort History Museum that is upstairs. So when people come into town, this is a great place to jump in. Our visitor center staff is tremendous at giving you just a little snippet of the things to do. We'll also point you in the right direction to kind of find, kind of meet those expectations you came to town with. So if you are looking for great food, they're going to put you in place with some great and great places
Perfect.
to eat. And if you're looking for a little bit of the kind of the local culture, they'll put you in the right direction. If you're just looking to take a tour, those things can happen and start right here at the Arsenal. But if you're just looking to kind of get your feet wet a little bit on Beaufort history, the History Museum upstairs in the Arsenal will definitely be a great starting point. And I recommend it to anyone taking a trip, whether that's an overnight trip or a day trip to the area. And listen, you got to make your first start here at the Beaufort Arsenal.
Definitely. It's like a one-stop shop for like basically the perfect layout of everything that you can find there. So
Yeah.
I think it sounds like the perfect place to dip your toes in.
Yep, we definitely highly recommend it. We have, the cool thing is that there's enough space in the courtyard that you can find outdoor seating. You can get away from the sun a little bit. There's some shade, public restrooms. I mean, all the things you expect. While at the same time, there's a little bit of a history lesson in and around cannons from the periods before sit and grace the courtyard. And who knows, maybe you've timed your visit to the area when there's a encampment where we have Union forces encamped in the courtyard. Or it could be a revolutionary militia group that's encamped there. And I participated in one of those back in 2013. We had some Revolutionary War militiamen come into the area, firing muskets, giving demonstrations. And the guests that showed up that day, they had a story, especially with the musket fire and those kind of things. And it's just one of the cool pieces of the charm that you're going to find here in the area. And if you're a history buff, you have to add Beaufort to your list if you haven't already.
Yeah, it sounds like a great place for anyone that loves history. Like I'm already like trying to visualize this. This is amazing. I would love to see that for sure. So
yeah, I mean, it's again, the starting place is amazing, and there's so much that goes on in and around the city, and people don't know where to start sometimes. They discover this new place, they've heard about it, they've read about it, they've listened to someone tell them about it, and so they come in, they're kind of, okay, where do I get my bearings? And they've done some homework ahead of time.
Right.
And most of that will include a visit to the visitor center. But when they get here, they're kind of caught off guard a little bit. They're expecting some, mundane visitor center. But when you walk inside the Arsenal and you realize, wait a minute, I am actually walking in this historic structure. There's got to be a story here. And sure enough, there's stories abound. And, it's a great place for people to congregate. You can have plenty of space to keep your distance from others and do your, kind of grab a seat, get your bearings straight. Because once you leave the Arsenal, your trip is underway for the most part, and you're going to have a great time. And it's a great starting place for sure.
Definitely. I know. If/when I make it, because I do plan on making it there, that'll definitely be the first place that I go.
When you guys do come, though, you got to go to the lighthouse. You got to go to the Arsenal. You got to see the architecture. But you really won't experience Beaufort in its fullest unless you get on the water. And, one of those ways, Natasha, that you can get on the water is using, one of our kayak tours to get out there, because it's the easiest way to see the water, in my opinion. Now, we have boat tours, and you may not have access to a boat, or the tours may have been running and you didn't get on there. But a kayak tour is a unique experience because it's a great way to be outdoors, be active, and then kind of see the city from a different angle. So think about this: the city of Beaufort, the heart of downtown, Port Royal, the Sea Islands are made up of these cascading rivers and the way that they weave in and out of these different areas and zones and tidal creeks. And so we recommend that if you are looking to get outside and be exert a little bit of energy and kind of down with that, hop in a kayak and have one of our tour companies do that. It's pretty awesome.
So can you kayak like through those streams and rivers through the city?
Well, yeah. So the city sits on the water, and there's kayak tours go up and down. There's some great tidal creeks to go through. You go into different creeks and hit different spots. I think one of the tours is set up and it really, again, we've talked about it here. It's all based on the tide.
Right.
You want your tour may be in Factory Creek. Your tour might be out at Rust Point Landing towards Fripp Island and Hunting Island, or your tour might be out of downtown Marina. Anyway, you're going to be on the river. You're going to see the history from the water, as if you were an explorer coming into the bay. And people don't get that. That's not an experience that everybody gets. Most people that come to town will drive by car. They will get out. They'll walk the streets. They'll see the water from the land side to the water.
Right.
But a kayak tour affords you the opportunity to be a part of it and see it from the water to the land, which is a unique perspective. And
Yeah,
one that,
that's an amazing perspective to have that I feel like most people never get. So I think
that's
that would
right.
be an awesome opportunity.
It is, and we have multiple kayak tour companies in the area, and you could listen. Not just kayak tours. I'd be remiss to not mention that we have a great stand-up paddleboard. There's some great companies that have launch points up and down the area. That, if you're a novice, like myself. I mean, I've never been on a stand-up paddleboard. I would feel very comfortable with the instruction that I got to get out there. The water's not going to do anything crazy to you. It's going to be a pretty fun paddle. If you kayaking's more your way, and that one's more mine anyway, it's going to be it's just a fun time. The water's always great to be on, and you never know when you're going to get one of those dolphin visitors popping its head up out of the water to come take a look at you. So,
I
you know,
love that.
yeah. So it's a great experience. One of those parts of the tour that I think people take for granted. They get locked into certain things and certain attractions, and rightfully so. I mean, I understand that, but I would recommend to people, and do quite often, that if your time allots for it, okay, if you have any sort of outdoor activity in your bloodstream, and most people do that come to the area, you're going to want to get on the water. And kayaking in the Beaufort River with a guide is one of the easiest ways to get a great trip through the area, and also kind of understand a little bit about the perspective of what this intercoastal lifestyle is about, and what we celebrate here day in, day out, of being a destination on the water.
Yeah, no kidding. That sounds incredible. And I'm just like picturing going through these like streams. It's like kind of breaking away from being landlocked and seeing things from water. It's cool.
It is. And so you please understand that it's the river's wide, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a larger body of water. It's not a small water, but you get into these little tidal creeks that during high tide afford you to get really close. And then at low tide, you will say, wait a minute, I was paddling there and now it's completely dry. And it's pretty cool because you can see kind of, that how the water flows in and out of the area, and you can get a part of that. And I think it's a different type of kayak. You're not talking about raging rapids here. We're
Yeah.
talking about in a river that can see an abundance of wildlife. You're going to get a different viewpoint of the city or the area, and it is a tremendous way to see this area, definitely from the water.
No kidding. You mentioned wildlife and you mentioned a dolphin, and I know we've talked about turtles in past episodes. Are there any
Yep.
other really cool wildlife that you'd be able to see or sometimes get that surprise visit from?
Um, right off the top of my head, I think the dolphins are pretty cool.
I agree.
Just to see in it. If the tide is right and you're in an area in which feeding frenzies are taking place or food is abundant, you may see something called a tailing redfish. Now, redfish are red drum. We call them redfish here, and this redfish has a awesome spot tail, and you can sometimes see it at low tide feeding in a feeding on the short surface, or at high tide you may see them in a sand flat. It's kind of one of these flats where they can get up and grab the food up there, and you could see these fish because their tails are in the air, they're feeding, and we call it tailing redfish. And for a sight fisherman, somebody that's fishing, which is an episode, like I said, it's another episode all by itself, and,
Right.
and I would not be the person that would need to chat about that. We have tremendous fly fishing guides that will get you in the right spot all over this area. But this is
Perfect.
some of that sight fishing, and you can see that. You may run into the lone manatee that shows up here and there, but primarily you're going to see dolphins, you're going to see birds, you're going to see egrets and blue herons. You're going to see a feeding osprey, which is one of the most magnificent birds in my opinion. You'll just see an active wildlife population in the area, and it just speaks to kind of how we are and what we enjoy in these areas. A lot of birding takes place in this magnificent part of the world, and you can definitely see it from the river.
Understandably.
Yep.
That's so cool. you have like your own little ecosystem of
No doubt.
wildlife and fish and everything. That's cool. I remember actually when we were first talking, like I think in the first episode, and you had me watch the video that's on your website, and it had like the little island thing that I thought was a sandbar, and you were saying it was something else. Is that the feeding frenzies that are happening?
Oh,
Do
no,
you
no.
remember what I'm
Well,
talking about?
yeah, I do. And no, there's a couple good like shows out there. I think you can find it on YouTube. You can find the like a dolphin feeding frenzy. Watch how dolphins eat. They'll
Okay.
these dolphins will push the bait to shore. The
Uh-huh.
bait will get stuck on the shore, and the dolphins will come out of the water and grab the food. You need to watch that. That's pretty cool. I'm not saying that's everyday occurrences here down there, but that's how the dolphins feed here. They just push it up there at low tide. It's kind of cool to watch.
Yeah.
There's some good video on there, but no, what you were seeing in that video was our oyster beds that are in and around the area,
Okay.
which oyster farms in and around. People can go and get their oysters.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
I'm sure that could also be its own little episode. So we'll save that for later. I
It
just wanted to
is.
make sure that
But talking about oysters
perfect.
gets me hungry. So I mean, I love
Yeah,
oysters. So
you're
anyway,
good. So I don't blame you. Speaking of food, we were actually talking about something called frogmore stew earlier. Do you want
yeah.
to let our listeners in on what that is?
Yeah, I think most people will reference it as a low country boil, which is a super simple seafood stew of sorts, if you will. And there's a story behind it. So here in our neck of the woods, we reference it either low country boil or frogmore stew, and that's because folklore says that someone from our area referred to this batch of food that he made using his family recipe that contains these shrimp and sausage and red potatoes and corn, and you kind of mix it all with some sort of seasoning, and it became something you can make for a large group, and so he referenced it as frogmore stew, and that's how the folklore is, but it's referenced by many as low country boil. It is I can explain it this way to people who have never experienced it in some form or fashion. But here in our area, this is more of an event than it is a meal, right?
Hmm.
Like you don't just make a low country boil for like you and one other. This is kind of where you invite some neighbors down, some friends and family over. You get a big pot of water boiling. You throw in your potatoes, you get them cranking, you get your sausage, get your corn, you get those rolling, and then about 3 to 4 minutes left in the whole thing. You want to add the shrimp until they get like bright pink but not overcooked.
Right.
And then by that time you're ready to go. You get the boil out, and on your picnic table or on your tables outside most likely, and you got everybody gathered around. You lay out your paper, your brown paper, your newspaper, and you dump the pot. And everybody comes and grabs and picks. And in my house, it's Old Bay and butter go on top of it after of course, you've been boiling in an Old Bay as well. But you dump a little bit more seasoning on there, and you just have at it. And it's kind of like a great event to have. And like I said, it's more. I would quantify it more of an event than something like a meal,
Right.
like a dish, if you will. It doesn't take long to prepare, but the appearance that you work for all day to treat your guest. I mean, that's what the low country boil is about. It's about this kind of gathering of friends and family. Kind of everybody partakes on it. I mean, not everybody's going to enjoy the shrimp. I do. That leaves more for me, but everybody can pick what they're looking for. You get your seafood, your sausage, your corn, your potatoes, your seasoning. I mean, it's amazing. And
My mouth is actually watering right now,
oh
like
yeah,
listening to you describe it. So
no doubt,
yeah, it
no doubt.
sounds like it.
And like I said, it's you get your choice. I would make sure that you get a good pot. Invite a lot of friends over and make sure it's happened. If you're looking to do it at your home, the recipes can be found all over the internet. But let me give you a pro tip, okay?
Okay.
A pro tip for me is do not overcook the shrimp. That's the pro tip,
That makes sense.
right?
Yeah.
Like that can, not being a shrimp snob, but overcooked shrimp is not that good. I would also,
It loses a lot of its flavor.
it does. For the actual effect in my family, we leave, the shell on the shrimp. Right,
Okay.
we dehead it, devein it, but leave the shell on it, and that it's just picking, getting your fingers messed. Some people take it off, but I think that adds to it. But you're gonna get your stuff in there. Some people will use a little bit of white vinegar in there, and Old Bay seasoning is a must. It's a staple, but Zartan's has some. I mean, I'm sure there's different, but there's some local seasoning around our area that if you're in Beaufort, or you can go online and look, there's some Gullah seasoning that really, really spices up, gives that great low country taste to it.
Ooh,
You
I'm
can,
so hungry
yeah,
now.
you can grab some of those seasoning. I do believe they ship, and I'm not going to, instead of butchering their name, I would just tell you to go online and look for the Gullah low country seasoning they have. It's a great seasoning for this. And matter of fact, we used it for the last one we had. We put some on top to finish it. But listen, I mean, it truly is tremendous food, but it's a better event. And
It's like,
go ahead.
I was gonna say it's kind of like our equivalent of like a neighborhood barbecue or like picnic. But
Yeah.
it's definitely the low country intercoastal lifestyle
Yeah.
version of it, which sounds amazing and very social and delicious. So
Yes, it's very
sounds
social,
perfect.
very delicious, and it fits a narrative that here in our area in the South, that we love to be around our friends. We love to celebrate, and we love to eat. And we love to eat what is fresh in our area at that time. And so that's why, the events that take place in Beaufort, they're either going to be some sort of low country boil, frogmore stew, or it's going to be an oyster roast. But either way, we're going to celebrate and have a great time, and it's going to be good eats all the way around. And the company is just as good as the food, and the food is just as good as the memories made that night. And so it is a fun time. I recommend that wherever you're listening from, that you kind of go online and look for a recipe. Or Ken, you can hit me up on email. I'll send you my personal recipe, which calls for a couple other flavors that kind of give it that extra kick. You can hit me up on email at robb@beaufortsc.org, and I will send that recipe to you personally.
Perfect. That sounds amazing. I might have to hit you up for that. Like, I want to try it there, but gotta make it myself, see
I
how
hear
well
you.
I can do. So I'm just curious, when you have these, do you do them like at your house or like at a beach, everywhere? Where's like the number one place to do it?
Yeah, I think well, for us, it's always going to be around the house, right?
Mhm.
We're gonna do it there. It's fun. You can invite your friends over. You got some space for the kids to run while you're preparing it. It's not a long cook, so the eating and the fellowshipping and the fun that comes around that, like I said, it's more of an event than it is like a dish.
Right.
So you're not going to cook this up like a steak dinner, but this is going to be kind of one of those neighborhood get-togethers. It's really cool. You can feed a lot. So I would say home. Now, something like Low Country Supper, which is an event that the Water Festival hosts. It's in Waterfront Park. They cook a big batch of Low Country Supper, and people show up and they participate. You have fundraisers who do it, and it could be done, in a couple of places. But the key ingredient is you got to be able to, boil a pot of water and a big enough pot to feed everybody. So usually that's left to the house. Not everybody's a shrimp eater, right?
Mhm.
And I've talked about crab legs, and my affection for blue crab. We will
I do.
throw in crab legs in our particular low country boil when they're in season for sure. Not the traditional low country boil, though, which is shrimp, but I will tell you that adding crab legs in there is good times.
Yeah, I was like, it sounds like a really delicious alternative as well. So
Oh yeah.
I think you're good. So if someone's visiting Beaufort, how would one of those fundraisers that you were talking about, like the festival, be a good way to experience this, or how would there be a good way for them
Well,
to experience
I will
this?
tell you that there are several restaurants who do have a low country boil or frogmore stew on their menu as a menu item. So there you are getting the dish version. So if you're looking to do it, but what I would encourage you to do is if you're staying in our area and you're wanting to time it, see if there's any of those events that are having one. If there are, in the time frame that you come and go there. If not, go to a restaurant and participate there. The food's going to be great. I can promise you that.
Oh, yeah.
And then, if you're a friend of if they're a friend of the podcast, maybe we can just put one together for some folks and do it ourselves right there in the Arsenal courtyard and have a good old time.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, I think we've covered a lot of awesome content today. Rob, is there any last things you want to add?
Not at this point. I can't think of anything else I'd add. But again, if people want those recipes, all they have to do is hit me up, and I will send those as we discussed.
Okay, perfect. Well, then, thanks everyone for listening. We're excited to continue talking about all things Beaufort, and we'll see you at our next episode. Don't forget to subscribe and listen and leave a review. Thank you. This has been another episode of the Intercoastal Podcast, part of the Destination Marketing Podcast Network, hosted by Natasha Lye and produced by the Relic team.